Howdy folks, and welcome to another episode of Smoogleville, in which I will be showing you how to build this robust and long-lasting garden gate. Cut. Okay, so I'm going to replace this broken gate because this clapper gate will not stop small animals, and we do have a small visitor who joins us occasionally, Daisy Dog. We call her Doglet. And she could easily get through here, so I do need to put another gate. I basically need to replace this broken one so that we can close it off when the Doglet's here. So I'm going to measure this gap now. 49 3/8. At the bottom it's 49 1/4. Not bad. They're pretty straight, but you always want to measure at different positions. Let's do the middle just to check that there's nothing crazy going on there. No, that's 3/8 still. Okay, so we need a gate that's 49. Actually, I'm going to reduce the width of the gate to allow for expansion, so I'm probably going to go to about 48.5. And the height I'm going to line up with these crossbars here. That's 39 inches. Okay, so let's go make a gate that will fit in that between those two posts. So to make this gate, I've cut two lengths of 2x4 at 48.5 inches, and I've got these at 39 inches. This is the width of the gate and this is the height, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a mortise and tenon to fit these together, okay, like that. And it's going to be offset to allow for a crossbar, so this should be fairly strong. So let's get started with the marking out. Right, so the first thing to do is to mark out, I'm going to mark out the tenons first of all. Okay, so we need to come back 1.5 inches. I'm going to put an 1.5 inch shoulder on this, a tenon on there, so let's mark it 1.5 inches and mark that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the table saw and I'm going to cut along that line there. Let's actually do these both at the same time, just so that I can get them marked out. Okay, do the same on the other ends. 1.5 inches. 1.5 inches. Right. Make sure those are lined up. And there it is. Mark across there like that. Okay. And now let's think about the depth here. The question is, how big a hole do we want to make in these? Okay, so there's my mark again. Let's mark across here. And what we do want to end up with, let's move those out of the way. What we do want to end up with is enough of a shoulder on here. I'm going to line it up with a pencil line on the back side here, so that's 1.5 inches. Okay, so we're going to have to cut this, cutting up a shoulder, if you like, of the tenon there. And actually, I could use the bandsaw actually to cut these in. That might actually work quite well. So we'll see. I'll try that first, see if it's accurate enough. But we want to end up with about 1 inch of material in the middle here, and these are 1.5 inches. So I want to take about 1/4 inch off each side, and that will leave us a nice meaty 1 inch piece here. But it'll allow this to seat up into the mortise that I'm going to cut into these. So let's get those cut now. Let's just finish the marking out and then get them cut. So okay, so we are going to tenon out. These are the longer of the two gate styles here. This is the width of the gate basically, and I needed a mortise and tenon, so I had to cut tenons in these long ones, and I'll chop a mortise for these in the sides of the gate, the style, you know, the upright bits. I don't know what they're called, but anyway, so I needed to cut tenons, and my bandsaw's not. I was going to do them on the bandsaw. The bandsaw's not cutting straight. So if you come this way, I have created this jig. You can buy these commercially, but I didn't have the time or the money to get one today, and I needed it today, so I made one out of odds and ends. I've got some oak, some plywood, that I've used to make this. A little bit of walnut in there as well. And this is my jig for cutting a tenon. So if you loosen this bolt, you can see here there's an angle that slides this way. So I've got a depth adjustment which is now set to give me 1/4 of an inch. And so if you come around here, I'll show you the setup on this side, and this will hold the thing upright. Okay, so I was careful to get this very square, and so it holds it upright, and I've fitted this clamp to it so I can hold the material steady. And because you're cutting across the end grain, which is always tricky. So here's how it works. I've set the depth. First of all, let's push that forward so you can see. I've set that depth there on that blade to the depth I need, which is 1.5 inches, which is the thickness of my 2x4s. And so that's set to that line there, so that's good. And now what you do is let's bring it back here. There's a little lip here where this has been set back that this sits on. So I rest it on there, and then just crank that in, and then I'm going to start the saw, and then we just slide through. Okay. Flip that around, set it again, you can see I've got an extra bit at the back here to protect my hand from that blade once it's gone over the blade, so this is a safety feature. Okay. Let's flip that over and do that again on the other end. I need to turn it long ways onto the long edge and do the same again. And there you can see how it's cut that for a tenon. Now the next step in the process is to get it up on the old bandsaw here. So that's I've already got this set to 1.5 inches, and all we need to do is carefully, and this is a little tricky, last one. That's it. Okay. And there it is. That's the tenons made. So, spent the afternoon making a jig to do that, but it worked. You know, I was trying to do it with a bandsaw, but the blade's not so great on that, and it wouldn't cut straight. Now the idea is, next what we're going to do is I'm going to chop out a mortise with this. So it's going to look something like this. We place that on the gate like that. And it's going to be offset to the side, and I've got to cut a 1 inch by So just get a tape on that. Perfect, 3" by, should be about 1. Yep, exactly 1 inch. Very nice. So I've got to cut a 3 by 1 slot in here to receive that, and then what I'll do is I'll glue and pin that. So once that's got a hole to receive it, and it'll be a through mortise, I'll go right through the wood. So you can see that's why I'm doing. So you get a nice, if you look at that, that'll come up nice and tight against that material there. Once it's in the hole, that's going to make a really solid gate. And then we can run a pin, a couple of wooden pins through there, perhaps a bit of dowel, and then put a load of glue in there. Weather treat the gate, weather treat the wood, and that should make a gate that will last for a long time. But I'm very pleased with that jig. That worked out really well and solved a problem I was having. So that's going to come in again and again, that thing. Okay, right now, so what I've decided to do, I've marked these on both sides, both of them, because the drilling does save a little bit of time, I think, but by the time you get through the back, it's fine. The drill's actually all right. The problem is this guy. Okay, and no matter how well you set that up, these, actually, I think that blade's bent. I might replace that blade. It's a nice sharp blade, but it was... and I'm not the only carpenter who doesn't like this tool. I've heard others complain about them. They're all right for thin material, you know, and for cutting shapes and scrap. But if you try and do stuff on thick material like I'm doing now with 1.5 inch, they always wander off and you end up with holes this shape. And that was the case with the first hole I cut. I tried to get rid of most of the material with the drill bit and then go in with that thing to square it out. And what I ended up with was a wedge shape like that, because the blade just bends. Always happens. So what I've done is I've marked them on both sides, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim out both sides of this. So like I did on this side, I've marked it on the opposite side now. And I'm going to trim that out with a chisel. So I've got a good square slot each side, and then the middle's anybody's when I drill it out with the drill. So let's do what I did on the one side with these now. I'm just going to make a nice, just clip round them with the old chisel. And the middle of this is going to be anybody's, because no one's ever going to see it. In fact, frankly, no one's going to see one side of this anyway, because it's going to be covered with the little shoulders on the tenon that I've put on there. So, you know, it's all relative, I suppose. Yeah, so we just snap that out with in the usual style. Wrist to knock that last bit out. There. And that should do it. I'll do that on both sides, so that gets those. It gives me a clean guide. Like that, a clean square hole to start. There it goes. All right, dude. But I can see it's this shape, you know. But when you flip it over, you've got it's an 1/8 off easily. It's easily an 1/8 off, and that is, it was a straight blade. It is straight and it's sharp, but it still doesn't. Now the next step in this process is to put the brace on. And because the slats are going to go on this side, I'm going to put the brace on this side, because the hinges will be over there. And you always have the brace coming from the bottom of the hinge side upwards, okay? and that sort of helps support the structure. And now I need to mark this underneath, and the same on this here, just where it meets the upright there. Okay, and that's the inside of that. Actually, if I mark the outside as well, and this is really over the top for a gate, folks. I'm really just kind of doing it for the fun of doing all the joinery, because I think that's, you know, sort of part of the process. Now I've marked that, so I need to cut that. Okay, right, so that's got the basic shape cut. Of course it's still too long, but it's going to go in like that. Let's just make sure that that is coming to the top. Yes, yes it is.
I used the bandsaw to rough out the tenon for the diagonal brace. This will become a fairly complex join because I have to cut a relief where it meets the top and bottom rails.
Right, we're not out of the woods yet. I have to now relieve this. I've got to get it in the right position so that it will, and it's probably going to mean cutting about this much out to accommodate this, and then I'm probably going to do about 1/4 of an inch again on this side, like this, roughly. I'm only marking it roughly at the moment. Take this section out of this block here so that we have a shoulder here for it to bite into. So we're going to end up with a fairly thin, if we think that's going to come round to about there, and I'll mark this out properly, I'm just trying to show you right now the thinking. We're going to end up with this, about 1/2 inch worth of, maybe 5/8 worth of material that goes into here, but that should be enough. Right, so what I've done is I've evened up this distance here on both ends, and I made sure that when I sort of eye down here, and I don't know if I can get the camera just right, you'll be able to see what I'm seeing, which is that aligning fairly tightly with that post. That's actually been overcut slightly, but this tells me where my mortise goes, and it's also, if I look at it from the top view here, it's also going to give me my line underneath. Okay, one more thing I've got to do just before, and let's loosen one of these off just a bit. Oh. Not too much though. Just before, I don't want a little bit of tightness just to hold it there. I have to square this gate up. It's a little bit off right now. And you can see I'm using the roof square there to try and get it. And we've got some daylight at the top here, so this whole thing needs to be square before I do the final marking for this crossbar, or this thing will never. That's not bad actually. And squareness, that's pretty good. Okay, and we can see that's moved from the original, so make a darker line so I know where I'm putting my, that's it, squiggle that one out. Alright, good. So that's that. Now my idea for marking this is actually to use a chisel. If I put this chisel flat on here, I should be able to drag a line accurately onto this bar, so I cut it in just the right spot. Yeah, I've got to be close now. Yeah. There it is. That's it. Right. Whew. Excellent. Right, we are through, team. Right. Ow. Whew. Careful. Right. Just clean that up with a chisel real fast. Let's get some of this. That's it. There you go. Right. Okay. All right. Good. Let's cut the. And we have a knot right where we're going to be doing our mortise. The first time I'm going to on this project where I'm going to have to chop round a knot, and I'm going to pull that there like that. That's where my bar is going to ultimately end up. Let's pull that out. And basically we need to go 1/2 inch wide on that. So let's just use the chisel to get my mark. It's 1/2 inch after all. There it is. So drop that on it so I can get on those marks. Okay. Right, let's lose that bit there. Alright, so it should. Oh yeah, there we go. Oh, nice. Nice and snug. And with any luck, this, I'm probably going to pull this onto the floor to do this. This is going to go on there like that, and it's going to snug down on that like that. Yeah, I'm going to have to move this to the floor so I can get some purchase on it, but you can see how that's going to work out, right? That is coming together. So yeah, a little bit of smacking, and that'll come into position. Oh, let's take it out of the vise. Okay, and smack that in there.
After a successful dry fit, I took it apart again and cut some curves for the tops of the side rails. This not only looks good, but dissuades water from hanging out on and ultimately soaking into the end grain. End grain, of course, being the most vulnerable part of the wood for water penetration and ultimately rot.
Okay.
To complete the frame, I glued in some hardwood 3/8 dowels. These will function to provide further strength to the mortise and tenon joints.
I'm twisting that so it draws the glue in with it like that. Make sure we're bottomed out. Yeah, lovely. And then I'll just saw those off. That's it. I'll get a little bit of sandpaper on that. So that is a joinery gate rather than, I could have made it in a, you know, probably a 1/5 of the time, just with you know, using a screwdriver and all the modern trimmings, but you know, sometimes it's nice to do some joinery and spend time doing a through mortise, even though there are faster alternatives. But I have to wonder if this would outlast anything that's screwed together. Dowels are going to stay put, they're glued in, they're not going to move. So really it's about longevity when you do joinery. It should last longer if I use joinery on a piece of work. So only time will prove that out. We'll just get these little slats screwed on. Oh, and just a little bit of info about these slats that I want to share. They started out looking like that. Basically just moss, mold, and we use Crystal's trick, which is a 50-50 bleach and water dilute, brushed on, and then she actually scrubbed these to get them to come up, and they came up. They were a lot lighter than this until I put Thompsons on them, but they look a lot nicer than they did, because that's how they started life. So that was a little bit of a restoration tip there on old weathered timber. Right, okay, there it is. Alright, I'm going to fit the wire on it, and then we can go swing the thing on the...
The last step in the process was to screw the hinges to the existing gate posts. I used some 1 5/8" deck screws to ensure a stronger fixing to the posts. I put in just 1 screw in each hinge to start with, checked the swing, and then installed the remaining screws. This means less unscrewing if something is not right and the gate needs to come off again. Oh, and let's not forget the installation of the hook and eye that I rescued from the original gate. Job done. Please click the like button if you found this video helpful, and we'd love to have you as a subscriber, as there's always something interesting going on in Smoogleville.
Now I can't use the blade. I hit the bench dog. That was actually by flipping the wood and doing it again was actually doing the job, but hitting the bench dog was bad. I need pliers.